Anybody need more time? All right, terrific. Now, when you get home today, I want you to make another commitment to yourself. Besides deciding to go for it with one of the big goals that you wrote down first on your handout, this time I want you to make a commitment to reach out to at least one of your mentors, just one. And if you have 5 minutes with them or a whole hour, pick their brains for every bit of information that you can get. Let them support you in your goals this year as you try to reach your dreams. You have the power to change your life, and it starts with a list. The list is the gist of how you're going to get it done. Now, you've already started that list of mentors, and you can continue that list when you get home. And don't forget that books can also act as a mentor to you. You have the power to change your life this year, and you can do it if you dare. Don't be afraid to go for it and ask for help. So what comes after the A in the DARE formula? Well, it's the R, of course. And the R in the DARE formula stands for reinvent yourself. Reinvent yourself. Now, I've been through several reinventions in my life. And if you learn how to reinvent yourself, you're going to learn to step into your own power and be more active, not only in your family, in your community, but in your world today. Now, if you would have known me several years ago, you would have known me not only in turmoil over my own identity, but of the identity of my boyfriend at the time. Let me introduce you to Frank. Now, Frank was a good-looking guy. Long, sandy blonde hair, piercing blue eyes. He was known for wearing a black leather jacket and black leather boots, smoked at least a pack of menthols a day, always had a white Russian in his hand, and he was known for being a total womanizer, a partier, and a general rock and roll fiend. Now, Frank and I met at a radio station that I was working at. My shift was the morning drive show, and Frank's shift was afternoon drive. So our paths crossed quite frequently in the middle of the day. Now, I admit it, over time, I fell for his bad boy personality. I did, and I fell hard. And before long, Frank and I became a couple. Now, we've been dating just a few months, and at one night, we were out at dinner at this cute little Italian restaurant. And I had a glass of wine. I remember it had been a really long and busy day, and I was finally just starting to relax. And at that point, Frank looked at me very seriously and said, "Erika, I have to tell you something." Oh no, I thought. All my bells and whistles went off. It's another woman. He's going to leave me. I knew his MO. I knew he was known for doing this. He was going to take off and leave me for another woman. My heart was beating 1,000,000 miles a minute. All these crazy thoughts were going through my head. How could I have been so stupid to fall for this guy? I should have known better. What an idiot. But on the outside, I tried to remain calm, and I said to Frank, "Okay, what is it?" Well, Frank took a minute, and he took his wallet out of his back pocket. And out of his wallet, he took a picture. And he handed me that picture across the table. I saw this blonde woman, big blonde hair, full glamour makeup, feather boa around her shoulders, the whole 9 yards. And I knew it, this was the other woman. How could he be so cruel as to actually show me her picture? Oh my gosh, how mean. And the more I looked at the picture, I realized I knew this woman. She looked really familiar, but I couldn't place her. So I said to Frank, "All right, who is she?" Well, Frank took a minute, and he hung down his head. And then very quietly, he said, "It's me." Holy cow, I thought, what in the world is this guy trying to tell me? Unbelievable. How was I supposed to deal with this? How could he keep this kind of a secret from me? What am I supposed to say? How was I supposed to deal with this situation? And so I said to him, "You like to dress like a woman?" And he said to me, "Sometimes." Okay. Okay, I thought, whew, should I head for the hills right this second and run? Should I sit here and talk to the guy? What should I do? Now, being in the entertainment industry, I did know a lot of people that were either gay or bi, or some of them had some kind of fetish. So cross-dressing was not entirely unknown to me. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought of all the things that Frank could have told me, it could have been a whole lot worse. So I sat there contemplating what to do, and finally I said to Frank, okay, let's go dress shopping together sometime. Now, over the next few years, Frank's hobby became much more than a whim. In fact, with the help of an amazing therapist, over time, Frank was able to admit to himself and me that what he really was not a crossdresser. What Frank had been hiding his entire life and trying to bury was that he was transgender. Frank was a woman trapped in a man's body. Now, when Frank decided that he was going to move forward with hormone therapy and then complete sexual reassignment surgery, I knew I had to ask myself some pretty serious questions. Could I, a heterosexual woman, be in a relationship with another woman? Would people think I'm gay because of the relationship? What in the world would my friends and my family say? And perhaps most importantly, how would this impact my young and impressionable son, who was in middle school at the time? Well, I didn't have the answers to any of those questions, but I started seeing a really good therapist, Dr. Millie Brown. Now, Dr. Millie Brown was actually world-renowned for her work with the transgendered, and she'd written a book called True Selves. And that book, True Selves, is specifically for the friends and family members of the transgendered. And with Dr. Brown's help, and the help of that book, I came to realize a few things. I came to realize that I did not need anybody else to affirm my sexual identity. I knew who I was, and I knew what I was, and I didn't need anybody else to approve that. I also came to realize that although Frank's exterior would be changing dramatically, that the person I fell in love with, the personality inside, was not going to change. That was going to remain the same. So I made one of the most difficult decisions I've ever made in my life. And I decided to embrace Frank, Frank's new feminine name. Now, Fran and I, we joined the local LGBT community center, the Billy DeFrank Center here in San Jose. We became pretty well known in the community, actually, in the world of the LGBT community, lesbians, gays, bisexuals, transgendered, and queers. And one year, we even co-emceed the San Jose Gay Pride Parade together. And my son held the banner at the front of the parade, marching right along, announcing the parade. Now, one of my biggest undertakings during this time of reinvention was for my son. He was in middle school, and we didn't know any other LGBTQ families that were like ours with kids, not one. I knew he needed some kind of support system, something that he could identify with. I looked high and low, all over the South Bay, for any kind of meeting or organization or group or anything that might be helpful to him at this stage of our unique lives. And I found nothing, nothing. But I kept looking. I was really committed. And eventually, I did find an organization up in San Francisco called Collage. Now, Collage stands for Children of Lesbians and Gays Everywhere. And they have some amazing programs, not only for kids of middle school age, but for kids of all ages. There was a problem, though. I knew that driving from the South Bay, where we lived, up to San Francisco several times a month was honestly just too far to go. I also knew that at that distance, it would be very difficult for my son to form close relationships with the other kids. There had to be another solution. So I kept looking. And again, I found nothing. So one day, I picked up the phone and I called the executive director of Collage up in San Francisco. I introduced myself and I said, "Have you ever thought about starting a chapter in the South Bay?" And she said to me, "Erika, we've actually wanted to do that for years, but we've never had anybody who would stand up, take responsibility, and make it happen." You know what I said? "You do now." Now, over that next month, I worked really hard to get the word out about the first South Bay chapter meeting of Collage. I worked with the Billy DeFrank Community Center to spread it to their community. I worked in my other networking groups to spread the word. I told my friends and my family. I made flyers and left them everywhere I went. I did everything I could to spread the word about this new South Bay chapter of Collage. And the next month, at our very first meeting, a dozen kids showed up. A dozen kids, all of them in middle school, and all of them with LGBTQ families. Now, we took plenty of time to do fun activities and crafts and things like that. And we also took plenty of time to discuss our families and what made them so unique and special. We also let the kids share their concerns and the fears that they had, being along their peers at school who often could not identify with their families. And this gave these kids a chance to know that there were other families out there just like theirs, that it was okay to be different and unique and have a special family. Now, I will tell you, my son, he's in college today and he's doing just great. And Fran and I, we actually parted after about 8 years. But that South Bay Collage group that I started back then is still going strong today. And that is one of my biggest accomplishments during that time of reinvention in my life. Now, after Fran and I split, I needed to reinvent myself again. I really needed to rediscover my identity and who I was and who I wanted to be. And it took me a while to get my head on straight and figure out which direction I was going. And eventually, about 5 years ago, I met another long-haired, sexy man. Now, this one was a musician, and he was exactly the opposite personality of Fran. He was sweet and kind and gentle and courteous, the nicest guy you would ever want to meet. And before long, Dennis and I became best friends. Now, Dennis and I, being best friends, we would hang out all the time. We talked on the phone several times a day and were constantly around each other. And one night, he was over at my place and we were sharing pictures of ourselves from the time we were little kids to growing up. And at one point, he looks at me really seriously and he says, "Erika, I have to tell you something." Oh no, I thought, here we go again. Here we are, another picture situation. What's this guy gonna lay on me? How could he have been hiding something like this from me? Is this gonna be a Frank situation all over again? Can I handle this one more time? Again, my heart was beating 1,000,000 miles a minute, and all these crazy thoughts were swirling through my head. But on the outside, once again, I tried to remain calm, and so I said to Dennis, "Okay, be honest with me." So Dennis took my hand, and then he looked me straight in the eye, and he said, "Erika, I've been madly in love with you for the last few months, and is there any reason I shouldn't kiss you right now?" Now, honestly, I could not think of a good reason to say no. And about a year later, Dennis and I were married. We're going on our 4th anniversary this fall, and we're still best friends today. And that was a reinvention of my relationship. Now, whether you realize it or not, you have already been through several types of reinvention in your life. You've gone from puberty to womanhood. You've gone from maybe being a daughter to a girlfriend or a wife. Maybe you've gone from relying on your parents to getting your first-time job. All of those things are reinventions. Reinventions. So what about you? How can you reinvent your life this year so people will perceive you differently or perceive your position in the community differently? What would that look like? Now let's go back to your handout. And I want you to take a minute. And this time, I want you to write down what you can do to reinvent yourself and change the way that people either perceive you or your position in the community. Go ahead and take a minute and write a couple things down. Now what I want you to do is I want you to turn to your neighbor, and I want you to share a couple of the things that you wrote down that you are going to do to reinvent your life this year. And we're going to get a little support from each other. And when time is up, I'm going to raise my hand, and when I raise my hand, I want you to raise your hand too. So go ahead and turn to your neighbor and share what you're going to do to reinvent your life this year. Get support from each other.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, are you Dallas?
Yes, I am.
Good to see you. The Womyn Story Club. Shall we? I'm Erika Taylor Montgomery, yes. Oh, well, okay, great. I didn't really write anything, but you guys are having fun. She's quite Well, I'm Judy. Hi, Judy. I'm Lucy. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you too, Dennis. So she wanted to know what we're going to do to reinvent ourselves. And, well, I'm going to do something she's already talked about. So, to not be afraid to make lists, always to make lists. And one of the things I want to really do is really let myself be total model. So I'm really afraid to let myself be model. So I'm going to do that.
I work in a conventional male business. But I have to reinvent myself every day.
Right, I think that's true. It's just too much people, right?
About 7 things.
Yeah. But,
Not always easy to I pretty much wanting to prove it.
right, so you have to act like the way, like a man in the way that our society has seen kind of structure. They have to be tough and can the people kind of see you be like vulnerable or
Yeah, but I am vulnerable.
are you considered like a this kind of image then or something? Okay, so you do the real nice task. Do you bring the treats to work and stuff?
Well, yes, sometimes I do. But no, I can't be this.
Right.
Okay, but see, when I need to be.
But you can do both. You have the balance.
I had to reinvent myself over the years.
Oh yeah. Resilience, man, so like.
terrific. Great. Now, is somebody willing to share? Does somebody want to share one thing that they wrote down to reinvent your life this year? Yes.
Sure, I'll share. I think Erika already mentioned this, but one thing I really want to do this year is let myself be really vulnerable. I'm always, putting up this really, I can be tough, and being a boss, managing a lot of people, I'll kick your butt, I'll put you in line, and everything's going to go chop chop kind of thing. And it sounds kind of sick saying that, but I really want to be vulnerable and be willing to just open up and let whatever happens without, kind of putting a wall up, if that makes sense.
Fantastic. Somebody give her a high five. All right. Way to go. Way to go. All right. Awesome for sharing. Thank you. Now, do you see how by reinventing yourself, you are giving a gift to the world? You are giving a gift to your community and to your world at large. And only you can give that gift, because you have the power to change your life if you dare. Don't be afraid to go for it. Ask for help. Reinvent yourself. Be a daredevil of your own life and make change happen. You know where it starts? It starts with a list. The list is the gist of how you'll get it done. Now again, you've begun another part of the list today. And that list is going to support you as you try to turn your dreams into a reality this year. The list is the gist. Say it with me. The list is the gist. That's right. The list is the gist of how you're going to get it done. Now, if you're feeling like you're in a groove at all with me today, I encourage you to connect with me on Facebook after the conference. All my contact information is at the bottom of your handout, and there's a QR code right at the top that will take you directly to our Facebook page. And when you get there, I encourage you to share with me a couple of things that you're going to do to reinvent yourself this year. If you feel like you're in a groove with me at all, it's okay if you want to think of me as one of your mentors. Let's build our own community of support online. I would love to support you in your goals this year as you try to reach your dreams. You can do it if you dare. So the last letter of the DARE formula, after the D and the A and the R, is the E, of course. And the E in the DARE formula stands for exist in the present. Exist in the present. And that means setting short-term goals to help you get from your point A to your point B. Now, if you do not do this, chances are you're going to end up scattered and stuck in a rut. And who wants that? Now, have you heard, actually, that according to the Aztec calendar, the world is supposed to come to an end in 2012? Yeah? Now, if that is not a good reason to exist in the present, I don't know what is. Now, I want you to think back with me to the year 2008. And if you're too young to remember, what I can tell you is that it was the beginning of the worst economic downturn since the Great Depression in the 1930s. Banks stopped lending, businesses started closing, people stopped buying. My company, Three Girls Media and Marketing, was barely 2 years old. And I suddenly found myself with clients that weren't able to renew because they didn't have the money to. And I had no new prospects on the horizon. I was terrified of being one of those 80% of failures that my friend Kristen had warned me about. I thought about this endlessly, day and night, and I had horrible thoughts running through my head. What if I have to lay people off? What if I can't afford to offer benefits anymore? What if, oh my gosh, I actually have to close my doors and go back to work in corporate America? It was terrible. Now one night, I was laying in bed with all these thoughts swimming through my head, and I was not getting a wink of sleep. It had to be 2 o'clock in the morning. So finally, I got out of bed, and I started pacing the house, room by room, pacing back and forth with all these thoughts of negativity running through my brain and wondering exactly how I was going to keep my business afloat. Now, at one point, I passed my desk, and on my desk, I saw a notepad and pen. And I thought back to my 3rd grade teacher, Mrs. Colbert, and I remembered what she had taught me about making a list. So I sat down at my desk, and fast and furiously, I started writing down short-term goals, things that I could do that would help keep my business afloat. I wrote down things like revamping our website, coming up with a new list of services for lower costs that would be more affordable to our clients. I wrote down joining new networking groups because I knew I had to spread the word to a whole new audience about my business. I wrote down everything I could think of that would help me keep my business afloat in the short term. Now, the next morning, my husband found me sound asleep at my desk with that pen still in my hand. But I will tell you that over my cup of hot tea that morning, things did look a little bit brighter. Just a little bit. Because now I had a set of activities that I could do to help me, in the short term, keep my business afloat. I was existing in the present. Now, I want you to take a minute, and we're going to go back to your handout. The very first thing that you wrote down was your big picture of what you wanted your perfect life to look like 12 months from now. And now what you're going to write down are some short-term goals that are going to help you get from your point A to your point B so you can make those dreams become a reality. So go ahead and write down a few short-term goals, things that you can do to help you reach your dreams this year.